Hi guys, Creative Katie Karen Burchill here. Welcome to an art journal tutorial. This one we have lots of different things that you've not seen me do before. So I'm starting out the page and I'm going to use a warm color scheme. I'm using some bright yellow, some orange, and alizarin crimson, and I'm going to mix that with a little bit of gesso. And I'm just applying the colors with a makeup sponge, blending them on the page. Now I'm working in my 9x12 Canson Mixed Media journal, but I've taken the pages off the coils this time. And the reason for that is I want it to be flat and easy when I'm making my pages. None of the other pages are going to get dirty because I'm working on a flat surface. They're not there. And then I'm going to put it together at the end. Now, this is the first time that I've done that with my coil um, journal, but I'm loving the freedom that this is giving me. Now here I didn't tape off the coils, but I could have put a string of tape across the coils so that the paint wasn't there. And I think I'll be doing that from now on because I think that'll just make it easier to put in and it'll give me that nice straight edge. Now, depending on how much yellow you use, how much orange, how much gesso, this is going to be warmer and brighter or softer. Now be careful when you're mixing the alizarin crimson and the gesso because you might end up with pink and that is never a good color. I just want this very mottled. And remember, this is the base layer of color. So now I'm going to apply some stenciling, some pattern on here. This is a new stencil for myself. It's called Flower Tiles. It's by the Crafters Workshop and I'll put links and names in the description box if you want to check it out. Love this pattern. I got it in a 12-inch and this one is the 6-inch. And I really do need to use it. It's a great pattern. This one's wisteria. And here's a case of it's a flower, but I'm not using it as a flower, as a focal image. I'm using it to put some interesting marks, some texture, visual texture on the page. So dig out those stencils, look at the little bits, and use them in their full capability. And don't be afraid to flip the stencil, turn the page. That'll give you some more interesting markings. And as usual, when I do a lot of the stenciling, I often keep it to the same colors and black and white. My goal here was to get a colorful background. This one is another new to me stencil, but it's an older Crafters Workshop stencil. It's called Zinnia. And I'm putting black paint through the stencil, and I want to bump up that contrast. And that the black against those warm colors, sunset colors, just is spectacular. This is a good way to use any mandala stencil. I like this one. It has nice wide open spaces. That teardrop at the top, you could definitely do some outlining or line work around that, and that would be spectacular. So it's another stencil that I can see multiple uses for. Now the first one, I didn't go right to the edge. The second one, I went a little bit around the edge and you get a different kind of marking. So you can pick and choose how much or where you're going to stencil to. You don't have to use the whole stencil. And it's really easy to stencil when you have a flat surface because you've taken it out of those coils. So I'm going back in and I'm just putting that line work around there. I like how those triangles show around it and give a little more definition to that. Got the black paint on my makeup sponge, so I'm just taking some time to do some edging here. I always do that edging. Capitalize on when you have the wet paint and you've got that tool in your hand. There's bits and pieces that aren't showing and I want a little more pattern, so I grab those stencils out. And it's just building up those interesting layers. Now, I would have been great just to have those three odd numbered um, mandala stencils, but I just decided I'm going to fill the page. I'm loving this stencil. I'm having fun playing. I'm sure I'm not the only one who doesn't know when to say when. Overlapping a little bit. I think it would be cool to do pretty much the same page, use the same stencils and everything, just a different color scheme, and see the difference that you would get. So I've really filled this page up. Every little nook and cranny has this zinnia stencil in it. It's just like a flower burst and it's just a pop of color. Very Aztec type looking, um, deserty. Now here was my plan. I struggled drawing faces and I love faces on art journaling page. So I bought this stencil from the Crafters Workshop. This one's called Charlize, but they have others. And I'm just stenciling the lines on here to give me a guide. This is the first time I'm using any of these stencils and first time I'm using a face stencil, and I just wanted to give it a try. And I'm not worried about the face right now because I plan on painting that out. So I'm grabbing just my white gesso here and I'm just going to paint over the face. My plan is to use this stencil as a base and then change the hair, change the eyes, work on some of the things and gain confidence to the point where maybe I'm going to draw faces on my own. Logically, I tell myself it can't be that hard. How hard is it to draw this oval shape and put on the hairline? But as soon as I start to do it, I freeze up and I panic and I don't have the confidence. So it's kind of like, you know what? Do what scares you the most and break it into steps. And you need to practice. You're not going to get better if you don't do it. So you need to risk being bad at something new. I'm just applying the gesso here, blocking off that background color and, putting a couple coats and drying it in between. If you don't dry it, it can get a little gunky and it starts pulling up the paint. If that's happening, stop, let it dry, then come back and put another layer to get the level of coverage that you want. As I sit here, I'm getting another idea to use this face stencil with some stamps that I just got. So I have some Delta Ceramcoat craft paints that I've had forever. I'm sure they're 25, 30 years old. They are still usable. Give them a good shake. And since I have this flesh colored one, I'm not going to mix paint. I don't have to. So I'm just putting the flesh tone, but you could use whatever colors you have and mix them. And I'm drawing in between. I just love that burst of color, though, that Mandela stencil in the background. I look at it and wow. Now I'm thinking of putting flowers in her hair, different, stars in her hair. I'm looking at what's on my desk. At the end of the day, there's usually lots of little bits and bobs on my desk. Now I'm just finding a paint color that works. And again, any color goes. It doesn't even have to be a traditional hair color. I could have made this, you know, purple. I chose kind of the yellowy. I wanted to bring out the yellow in the background and play with that. And I'm putting in highlights and mixing and blending it right in. A little bit of gesso, a little bit of brown, a little bit of, I believe it's yellow ochre, but it could be Naples yellow. If you don't have Naples yellow and you do have yellow ochre, mix gesso with the yellow ochre and you'll get very close to that Naples yellow color. And here, like I can change the hairstyle if I want to. I don't have to do what's strictly what was on the stencil. The stencil is the guide. Adding the shading under the chin. I could have put the stencil back on and stenciled that on. Just using brown here and just doing some shading on here using my angle brush and my float acrylic technique. Well, it's not my technique, but you've seen me use it so often. For a long time, I've been art journaling on much smaller surfaces, 5x7s, on the envelopes, on my 7x10. So using all the space that's on the 9x12 is a bit challenging. I'm finding I need to reach for my larger stencils a little bit, um, or put more on. You can also see more of the techniques, more background shows through, and I'm really enjoying that. So people ask, like, why would you have um, more than one journal? And I didn't get it at first because I thought, oh, I'll never have. But that's why, because sometimes it just gives you different limitations, different problems to solve. If I had more than one of the face stencils, I could mix and match. I could use the face of one, maybe the hair of the other. But my goal was to just experiment, see if I like using this, um, play with it a bit to see where I can take it. And I know there's lots of you out there like me who feel that we cannot draw, aren't brave enough to try the faces, but this way we can have those faces on our art journal pages and maybe build up confidence to be able to do it. So I'm putting the stencil on to add the line work. Did I have to do this? No, I could have gone on solo. Now I'm using one of these blending brushes, which I love, and archival ink, and putting the facial features on. And I'm using the ink instead of paint because I don't want the seepage, and I figure this will give me a little bit more control. And of course, I could have just drawn the eyes on myself, practiced the nose, the facial features, everything. And instantly, it doesn't look quite so lopsided anymore. The eyes they don't look like they have life in them. And I'm going to have to go watch some videos and see how people do eyes and see how they blend the skin tones. It's all a process. Trial and error. Not really liking that. That's why if everything's acrylic underneath, it's permanent. I can go in and change it. I can get rid of it with a baby wipe. Still playing with, I wish I had used my little wonky flower that I drew. I kind of like that in there. The scale of it was just the right size. But I've got butterflies. I've got some magazine clips. That one would have looked cute as well. The orchid kind of goes with the background. The butterfly in the hair. I like the orange of that color, the teal, because it's a complementary color to the background. And I like the size of it. And I believe that was a die cut that I bought at the Dollar Tree, dollar store, some kind of dollar store. I'm just adding some gold splatters, and I was just adding water. Over time, it dries up a little bit and thickens, so I just add a little bit more water. I could have masked off the face there so I didn't get splatter, but I wasn't too worried. Then I decide I need to brighten this up, so I'm adding a little bit of white. That just, it just lightened it a little bit. Grabbed my Starfish Stamp. My goal is to, dig out those stamps, use them. And I decided I'm going to put them in the middle of every one of those Mandela ones. It just needed a little bit of something, something else. And I found the saying in my sentiment pack, life has no remote, get up and change it yourself. It's from the Change Sentiment Pack, and there's a link to where you can purchase my digital download sentiment packs in the description box below. And here, I'm using a stamp and incorporating it into the stencil, taking that stencil shape and just adding to it with stamped images, with die cuts. Change the whole feel of the page. And as usual, I'm gluing it on with my Liquitex Basics Matte Medium. Using the red from the background on the lips, that just made a big difference. I should have also painted her eyes green to match the butterfly. I think that would have looked good. Shading around the image. Now you could have painted this girl on mixed media paper or copy paper, painted it on, cut it out, and glued it on if you're not brave enough to do it right on your background. And that would have worked the same. And then you would continue with the shading. I like how the shading just really makes it look like it's 3D. It makes it look like I have glued the girl on. And as always, shading around the elements, setting them off. It just adds that little bit of something. And as you can see, I'm turning the page constantly to get a better angle, the best angle, the easiest angle for me to do the shading technique here. So I'm going to go and check out on Amazon for the faces stencils, any of the faces stencils that TCW has. I'm not sure what's available on there. You can also go to the TCW Shopify store. The link is in the description box. They would definitely have them as well. Or ask at your neighborhood scrapbook place. Often they'll bring them in. Here are close-ups of the finished page. I hope you love it as much as I do. Tried a lot of new things here. Thanks for joining me. Give me a thumbs up, leave me a comment. Share with your creative friends. Bye for now.